Somewhere in your house or in your email, there's probably a medical bill that looks exactly like this one. An office visit, what Medicare paid, and then a line at the bottom for the part they say you owe. For millions of Americans over 65, that last line is not simply wrong. It is unlawful to send. Federal law prohibits it. The provider who sent it is violating their Medicare agreement. They could be sanctioned for it. And if you already paid, they are required to refund you. And roughly 1 in 8 people on Medicare are protected by this rule. Most of them have no idea. Now, I want to be careful here because this subject attracts a lot of misleading videos. You will see titles telling you that seniors do not have to pay certain bills, as though turning 65 switches something off automatically. That is not how any of this works. Almost every one of these requires you to qualify, and most require you to apply. What I'm going to do instead is go through 5 bills that a great many people over 65 pay without checking, tell you honestly who each one applies to, and show you exactly how to find out whether it applies to you. The first one is the strongest because it is not a discount or a program you have to argue for. It is a federal prohibition. So let us start there. So, bill number 1. If you are enrolled in something called the Qualified Medicare Beneficiary Program, usually shortened to QMB, then Medicare providers are forbidden by federal law from billing you for Medicare cost sharing. That means deductibles. That means coinsurance. That means copayments. All of it. And here is the part that surprises even people who work in healthcare. This applies to every Medicare provider, not only the ones who accept Medicaid. It applies whether you are on original Medicare or a Medicare Advantage plan. And it applies even when the state pays the provider nothing at all. The provider still cannot bill you. The legal basis is Section 1902 of the Social Security Act, and the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services publish a fact sheet on it for providers because so many of them get it wrong. Now, the obvious question, how do you know whether you are in QMB? It is one of the Medicare Savings Programs run by your state Medicaid office, and it is aimed at people with limited income and savings. I am deliberately not going to read you an income limit, and I want to explain why. Those limits are tied to the federal poverty level. They change every year, and a number of states set theirs higher or ignore certain kinds of income entirely. So a figure I read out today could be wrong for your state, and it might make you rule yourself out when you actually qualify. What I will tell you is how to find out properly. Contact your state Medicaid office and ask specifically about the Medicare Savings Programs. Or ring the Medicare helpline on 1-800-MEDICARE. Or contact your state Health Insurance Assistance Program, the SHIP, which gives free one-to-one counseling and has no financial interest in what you decide. That last one is genuinely underused, and it is the option I would start with. Bill number 2, a hospital bill where the hospital has a financial assistance policy and nobody told you about it. Here is something most people do not know. If a hospital is a nonprofit, and most American hospitals are, then federal tax law requires it to have a written financial assistance policy. Not encourages, requires. It is a condition of keeping its tax exemption under Section 501 of the tax code. The hospital also has to publicize that policy widely, and before it takes serious collection action against you, it has to make reasonable efforts to work out whether you were eligible for assistance in the first place. Now, what is in that policy varies enormously from hospital to hospital. Some offer free care below a certain income, others offer a sliding discount, and the thresholds differ. So I cannot tell you what you would get. What I can tell you is that the policy exists, that the hospital is legally required to have it, and that a great many people pay bills in full without ever asking for it. So what do you actually do about a hospital bill? Ask for the financial assistance policy by name. Those exact words. Financial assistance policy. Some hospitals call it charity care, and if you say that, you will usually be understood too. Ask for the application form, and ask what the deadline is because there is usually a window after the bill is issued. Do this before you set up a payment plan, not after, because once you have agreed to installments, the conversation becomes much harder. And if the bill has already gone to collections, it is still worth asking. The rules about checking your eligibility apply before extraordinary collection action, which is exactly the situation you are in. Bill 3, and this one follows directly from the first. Your Medicare Part B premium. For most people, that comes straight out of the Social Security payment before it ever reaches the bank account, which is precisely why it goes unexamined for years. But the Medicare Savings Programs, the same family of programs that includes QMB, can pay that premium for you if you qualify. And there is more than one of them. QMB is the broadest. But there is also the specified low-income Medicare beneficiary program and the qualifying individual program, and those have higher income limits than QMB does. So somebody who is told they earn too much for QMB may still qualify for one of the others. That is a distinction a lot of people never hear, and it is the reason it is worth asking about the programs as a group rather than asking about one by name. Let me stop here for a moment, because we are halfway through, and I know not everybody watches to the end. So if you take one single thing from this video, take this. Find your state health insurance assistance program, your SHIP, and telephone them. Search for the words SHIP counselor followed by the name of your state. It is free. Every state has one. The counselors are trained on exactly these programs, and unlike a broker, they have no financial interest in what you decide. One call covers every item in this video. If you do nothing else, do that. And if you are finding this useful, subscribing is genuinely how the next one reaches you. Bill 4. Prescription costs above the annual cap. Since 2025, there has been a hard yearly limit on what you pay out of pocket for prescriptions under Medicare Part D. Once your spending reaches that cap, you pay nothing more for covered drugs for the rest of the calendar year. This is a genuine change, and it is recent enough that a lot of people are still budgeting as though the old rules apply. There's also a separate program called Extra Help, which reduces prescription costs for people with limited income, and being in QMB usually qualifies you for Extra Help automatically. I'm not going to quote you this year's cap figure, for the same reason I did not quote the income limits. It is set annually, and I would rather you looked it up than trusted a number from a video. Medicare.gov has it, and so does your plan's annual notice. And Bill 5, which I covered in detail in an earlier video, so I will keep this short. Property tax, where a senior exemption exists and you never applied for it. Nearly every state offers some form of property tax relief to older homeowners. Almost none of them apply it automatically. There are 3 different types, they work differently, and the deadline usually falls months before the tax bill arrives. If you own your home and you are over 65 and you have never filed anything with your county assessor, that is a phone call worth making this week. I will link the full video on that at the end. Let me come back to the first one, because it is the one I would most want you to act on. If you are in QMB and a provider has billed you for Medicare cost sharing, that bill should not have been sent. What you do is tell them, in writing, that you are enrolled in the Qualified Medicare Beneficiary Program and that federal law prohibits billing you for Medicare cost sharing. Keep a copy. If they continue, you can report it to Medicare on 1-800-MEDICARE, and providers who persist can face sanctions. And if you already paid something you should not have, ask for it back, because the rules require providers to refund improper charges. I would not describe this as a fight. In most cases, it is a billing error rather than anything deliberate, and a clear written notice resolves it. So there they are, 5 bills that a great many people over 65 pay without checking. And I want to end on the honest version of this, rather than the version that makes a better title. Not one of these is automatic. You do not stop owing anything simply because you had a birthday. 4 of the 5 depend on your income, and the 5th depends on filing a form with your county. What is true is that these programs exist, that a very large number of people who qualify have never applied, and that the single most useful thing you can do is make one phone call to a SHIP counselor and ask them to go through the lot with you. It is free, they have no financial interest in the answer, and they will know your state's rules better than any video can. One important note, this is general education, not financial, legal, or medical advice, and eligibility rules vary by state and by provider. Please confirm your own position with the relevant agency before acting. If this was useful, subscribing is how the next one finds you. And tell me in the comments if you have ever had a medical bill you were not sure you owed. I read them all. Next time I am covering how Social Security benefits get taxed. Thank you for watching.